It's 11:11. Welcome, Ali, on behalf of the Papanui-Innes Community Board. Could people settle down, please, and take your seats? Thank you. Enough of this jibber-jabber. Sorry, that was my favourite television program. Boston Legal. Just saying.
Sorry, battery's a bit low.
Bear with. It's another one of my favourite television programs. Miranda.
Okay. Right, hi. Thanks for having us. We're going to be a little bit like the two Ronnies here. We've got all our information, but we're going to just kick each other under the desk as we get to the bits we're going to talk about. I'm Ali Jones from Papanui-Innes, and
I'm Emma Norris, Deputy Chair.
One of the hardest things for our board to see clearly what the community is to see clearly what the community needs, hearing what the community needs, and knowing that we have nothing that we can take out of the draft LTP in our ward. Of course, boards, anyone can request new things be included in the draft LTP without understanding it has to be give and take. Things go in, things have to come out. We've all heard that. The Papanui-Innes board doesn't have anything to take out because we have nothing in there that isn't major infrastructural work, land drainage program, cycleways, those kinds of projects. That said, we do have some requests and some arguments to back up our requests for funding of projects in our ward. One of the jewels in the Papanui-Innes crown is the Styx River and the surrounding environs. And this is something that Emma has been working with staff and with residents on, so I will throw it over to her.
So we've worked closely with the Styx River Catchment Working Party, and our board supports the resolutions included in our submission, which came from them. But we do note it will be subject to the land drainage staff determining the timing of the works within their project prioritisation. However, we would like to specifically mention the need for further dredging and continued weed cutting, which clearly has a financial impact, but is absolutely key to managing and maintaining this river. We also support the development of a Styx River master plan and the necessary funding required to make that happen. This is essential as a foundation from which we can work to ensure the sustainability of the Styx River.
And the full information around the Styx is in attachment A on our submission. Now the traffic, and some really lovely photos up there. Can you go back? Some really lovely photos of what has been done in the Styx, and we have a very engaged community here, school children, supported actually by excellent work from council staff. The traffic in our ward is one of probably the number one concern our residents have and have had for some time. The Hills Road end of Westminster Street, which you can see here, has a playground, a preschool, Maidaho Primary, Christchurch Park, and there is a building there that may be used by the community in the near future. And that means a large number of children and families are regularly crossing this increasingly busy road. There is no safe crossing point on this road until you get to Cranford Street, which is about 1.5 kilometres in the other direction. And that's not really very safe some days either. Now, the board is requesting funding for a pedestrian refuge to ensure that our children and families can safely cross Westminster Street. Another part of this issue of traffic and related to traffic is school speed zones. And I know this is a concern across a number of boards. In our ward, in the Papanui-Innes ward, we have 15 primary schools, 2 intermediates and 3 high schools. We have a very, very high concentration of schools. And in fact, we have a very high concentration of families and children living in our ward. The Papanui-Innes Community Board continues to support the citywide 40-kilometre an hour school zones and that they be maintained at $500,000 for the 2018-19 financial years to allow the program to be accelerated. And all schools currently on the waiting list need to have speed zones installed. Still with traffic, in the Christchurch Northern Corridor, or the CNC, is one of the biggest roading projects in the city. Bringing more than 20,000 cars, I think I've heard the figure, Mike, up around 28,000 through that Innes Road intersection. How many? There you go, double it. Maths has not been my strong point. 55,000 through that intersection. Into the ward from the north, and that's clearly going to have implications for the residential areas in which the project ends, which is that Innes Road, Cranford Street area, and then into Edgware and St Albans. Again, a very high residential area with a lot of families and children. Now we call this, and it's been called by the council as well, the downstream effects to the CNC, to the Northern Corridor. And the board's contention is the funding for the work to counter these effects is in the LTP at the wrong time. Now the downstream effects will be felt as soon as the project is finished in mid-2020, but it's currently the bulk of the money is in the 2021 component of the draft LTP, and we suggest that work needs to be completed before then to ensure that we are ready, and it's currently in there too late. Right, major cycleways, routes.
We do not support the deferral of the completion of the cycleway program in our ward, specifically the Northern Line cycleway. This is partly built already and is well used by residents and children across the ward. However, it's missing a vital link between Tuckers and Starrocks Road, and cyclists are currently using a grass verge beside the railway line to get to where they want to be. Obviously this is a health and safety issue as they're running about a metre away from the railway track. So we want to see that cycleway finished as soon as possible.
And that's unfenced as well, so they're right there up against the track. The board's concerned that slowing the delivery of the program will cost council more in the long term, and I think that's a really key point. And I know one of the issues we understand that the issues across the city around quality of roads and pavements, and we'll get to that in a minute, particularly in the Shirley part of our ward. But the Greers Northcote Sawyers Arms Roads intersection, the highest accident rate for pedestrians in our ward. We've had one fatality and a significant number of car accidents. Northcote Road will become busier once the CNC, the Northern Corridor, is completed. It was actually meant to be completed already around about 2 years ago, but it keeps being deferred. And again, this is a health and safety issue. The new subdivisions around Highstead, Cavendish and Gardeners Roads are creating more traffic heading down Sawyers Arms Road towards this intersection, because it's not going to get any better.
We have a couple of streets in Richmond which we are pushing for to get included in the LTP. Nichols Street and also Randall Street. We'll talk some more about the issues in this area of Shirley in a moment. However, these particular streets need to be singled out for urgent inclusion in the renewal program. They were on the program. Nichols Street was on the program, but has now been pushed off. And we also support the remaining 1/3 of Randall Street. 2/3 of it is being done, but the other third isn't, so we want the whole lot to be done. Residents have come to the board on more than one occasion about this.
And we are hearing from them regularly as well via email and phone calls, which is, that's our job, but we need to raise it with you as well. In August 2017, the Mayor, who's always been passionate about the resilience and well-being of communities, said, and I quote, "The most important element is connecting communities and encouraging active citizenship. To that end, our ward needs facilities for our community." There is nothing in the draft LTP, new community facility-wise, for our ward for the next 10 years. Nothing, zilch, zip. Nothing for the next 10 years. This is despite parts of our ward in dire need of such facilities. There are projects in train and we're grateful for those. However, they're a long time coming and they're still not complete. Some have been delayed. St Albans Park, the best used park in our ward, has been unusable since February 2011 and was in poor condition prior because of drainage. That is now underway and is looking fantastic. Can't wait for that to happen. However, of course, with the winter here now, it's going to be at least another 1 to 2 seasons before, or autumn and winter and into the summer before it can be used. And we have the very reasonably priced St Albans Community Centre, which has been delayed because of an objection to the resource consent. Our ward, our Papanui-Innes ward, has been forgotten in many ways, particularly the Shirley area. An area that is in the east, but not the east we hear so much about. No big pool complex or hot pools here. I won't tell you what you already know, but we do want to emphasise that this area particularly continues to struggle, to be stressed by ongoing major land drainage work, which combined with major roading projects has seen residents deal with noise, dust, vibrations, roadworks, closures and general disruption for almost 5 years. This is where we need community amenity, community facilities. Hence the top priority of funding for a community facility to replace the well-used and much-loved Shirley Community Centre at 10 Shirley Road. Now this may not be replaced as a community centre, but it is a community facility needed. It has been in and out of the LTP and annual plan like a yo-yo over the last 5 years. The community has been consulted, they have an expectation, and that expectation has been dashed more than once. The funding of $153,000 was originally allocated in the 2020-2021 financial year to begin consultation and design work and was brought forward to 2018-2019, which is where we thought it was at the end of our last workshop, and there was to be subsequent funding. However, when the draft LTP came out, it was nowhere to be seen for the next 10 years. That means nearly 20 years until this community gets a replacement facility on this site. We would like this reinstated. We have a list of people in the area who support the reinstatement of this community centre or community facility, and we can leave those names with you. I think an important thing to remember too is that there are 8 schools in Shirley, again reflecting its residential and family aspect. 65% of residents are families with children. It's one of the highest percentages in the city. And census figures show that 21.2% of the population is between 0 and 15 years, compared with a city average of 17.8. This community is close to breaking point. They need a place to meet and to gather. To repeat, the funding of $153,000 originally allocated in the 2020-2021 financial year to begin consultation and design work was brought forward to 2018-2019 plus subsequent funding, and we would like this reinstated.
We move on now to the St Albans Community Facility. The board requests a further $350,000 in funding, as we've had the opportunity to purchase the section next door, which will future-proof the project for the community, providing much-needed green space in this high-density residential area. This was in fact something investigated 4 to 5 years ago with the backing of the council. However, with a house on the section, it became problematic and was not progressed. And we would also like to reaffirm that the original funding is carried forward from the current year to next year. Moving on now to Belfast. There is a new school being proposed for Belfast, which we see as an opportunity to work with the ministry and the school to build a new library for the community. These have been built around the city before and they work well. So we believe this is an opportunity that should not be missed. The Belfast Library has been included in the long-term plan for a number of years now, but has been completely pushed off this current draft.
It's also identified Belfast as a significant area of Christchurch to experience growth over the next 8 years, and the Christchurch City Council has in fact acknowledged that with the establishment of the Belfast Area Plan. Now the Edgware Community Pool.
The board is requesting that the council fund $5 million to the Edgware Pool Group to enable this asset to be completed. The Edgware Pool is not an aquatic facility like the council pools. It is a community facility, a gathering place, a safe place for people of all ages to meet, a place for children and adults to learn to swim, and a warm pool for the community to use for exercise and relaxation year round. In the summer there is outdoor space which will be landscaped, and there will also be an indoor teaching pool.
There have already been inquiries made to the pool group for people who want to provide the learners pool service. That's actually an income stream for the group, and there's certainly interest from providers in the ward. And this is one of the issues in the area too around Edgware. We've got this still in the planning process. So that will sort of change the focus in the area traffic-wise as well. But we do want to say that this group has worked incredibly hard to get to this point. They have spent a huge amount of money out of their own pocket. And when you talk about community partnerships, this is an ideal example of exactly that type of partnership. But a partnership is two-way. And there has been some support from the council to this point, but we believe that there should be more, and financially that is a big part of this as well, remembering that there would be no operating expenses that would continue with the pool. And this also demonstrates, when we look at what's happening across the city with other bids for pools, this is about equity. This has a budget of around $5 million to be up and running, so you can see it's good value for money with no operating expense, and certainly improves the equity of spend for these types of facilities across the city.
The board also requests that the council put funds into the long-term plan for outdoor youth facilities in the Papanui and Redwood areas, such as a skate park or basketball courts. This stemmed from a meeting we had with a group of young people in Papanui who were calling out for more recreation space. There are a number of playgrounds, lots of open green space and parks, but nothing for the youth of the area.
Well, that's our submission. I just want to reiterate again, or we would like to reiterate. Oh no, we've got strengthening communities funding, sorry. This has been obviously an issue for a number of boards as well, with the reduction over the last financial year. There has not been an increase to cover inflation in the last 10 years for strengthening communities funding. We have a very engaged ward as far as community groups go, and as a very active board working with these community groups, and we cannot continue to absorb the costs that have been reduced, or the costs that we have to absorb because of the reduction in funding. Our communities and the strength and well-being of our communities actually make for a stronger city. And if we cannot continue to support these groups, we believe that will weaken not only our ward, but the city across the whole of Christchurch. Thank you.
Right, Glenn, Jimmy.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm just curious over the Shirley Road facility. I noticed there's a, obviously the temporary facility at McFarlane Park, at Emmett Street, 106 to 108, the community church as well. So I'm just, how much needs analysis has been undertaken by way of provision, the need for provision for community facilities?
We've been doing that, and staff have been doing that for the last 4 or 5 years. And what we're finding is that the church facilities are now basically they're at capacity. There's a new one that's just been set up at the Shirley Working Men's Club on Hills Road. Fantastic. What they've done there is basically gut it and completely, redo it. They are at capacity, and there are still groups in the area that require space to meet. This is not casting aspersions against those who are church-going people or Christians, but there is a perception sometimes that people want a secular space. So that is something that we have to deal with in the ward as well. We met a couple of groups, one I can think of, which is a Probus group. So this is affecting older people as well as younger people particularly. This Probus group is based in Shirley and was based in Shirley before the earthquakes. They now travel to New Brighton to meet, and they want to come back and meet in the area. That is one of around about 8 groups that we've heard from, and we have information from all of them, and staff are still collating that. So there is definitely a need, and we're not going to argue for something that we don't believe there is a need for.
And you also
got a needs analysis? Have you actually got a document?
Yes. Yeah, well, we can get, yes, of course.
You also mentioned McFarlane Park. That provides for a very concentrated area of high need in Shirley, around that McFarlane Park area, sort of bounded by Quinns Road, Shirley Road, that specific area.
And Housing New Zealand's about to, we believe, start a new building plan there as well, and that will increase the density and the number of families there using that facility. So they are very different and should not be confused as far as needs go, but I appreciate your request for the information and we'll get it.
Jimmy?
Okay, thank you. I didn't hear from your community board regarding to the proposed long-term plan. The rates will be increased up to the 5.5%. What's your response?
We haven't taken a view on that, Councillor Chen, because we've been focusing very much on the community facilities.
Okay, yeah, if that's true, because based on your presentation, if you're seeking additional sum of the project, Like you mentioned, Edgeware Community Pool, they were probably for the $5 million. Another two, St. Albans, the community facilities is $350K plus Belfast Library Service for another $150K. If total together is about $5.5 million. They probably increased rates about 1.2 percentage plus, you know. So, what's your point of view?
Well, I think the point that we made that I have to reiterate is that we would very much like to put something in to counter the funds that we're asking for. Unfortunately, unlike other wards, we don't have anything that we can swap because the spend in our ward is almost entirely infrastructural projects, roading, land drainage, multiple millions of dollars, but actually when it comes down to community amenity and facility, there is nothing there. So I can't really answer your question, but what I'm asking is perhaps that we could look at more equity across the city, yes. And maybe there are other wards that might be able to cut back what they're asking for in order to enable our communities to get a bite of the pie.
Okay, thank you.
Yanni?
Just quickly, there is a huge amount of money being spent on the...
Sorry, you got away with that.
The northern arterial, the downstream effects.
Yep.
Have you looked at those budgets in terms of budget savings? Because it does seem like some of them, like Barbados Street, have several $million on dollars.
What was that street, sorry?
Barbados Street and Madras Street have several million, and it's quite hard to know how that money could be, you know, spent. I mean, it seems like a lot of money you've got for those roading projects. So I was just wondering if there's any of those roading projects that you've identified that actually could be reduced in scope to fund some of the things you want.
We have already gone back to staff to ask that, and some of those projects, the Barbados area that you're talking about particularly, some of it goes into central obviously, so there's a ward share.
No, like when we asked for it, we asked for information back, but the consultation's already gone out. So...
Yeah, but we're just about to consult on that as far as getting traffic into the city. That's the downstream effect stuff. Yeah. I'm not entirely understanding what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know quite where that boundary is, but you know, it just seems for putting some lines on the road, several $1 million.
It's not just lines on the road. I mean, the problem, and this is what we've raised a lot when we've looked at the cost of some of these works. Some of them seem to be very basic road renewals, but and you know this, Yanni, too. Once you take out gutters and you put new guttering in and all that kind of stuff, as well as widening the road, traffic lights at 250 to 500k a pop. It's frustrating, but it's very, very expensive. And look, I'm not an accountant or roading engineer, so I can't answer that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Look, thank you for your time and presentation. It's very good. It's very valuable having all of this input into the LTP. Thank you. And